In the year 325 AD, a Roman emperor who wasn't even baptized yet called a secret meeting to decide who Jesus Christ actually was. The terrifying truth. They settled the foundational doctrine of Western civilization with a political vote. For nearly 3 centuries, Christians had been hunted, thrown to lions, and executed by Rome. But now, the persecution had suddenly stopped. Emperor Constantine had just united the fracturing Roman Empire under his sole control, and he chose Christianity as the glue to hold his empire together. There was just one catastrophic problem. Christianity was tearing itself apart from the inside. The debate wasn't over tax money or land. It was over a single, universe-altering question. Was Jesus equal to God, or was he created by God? The streets of Alexandria, Rome, and Antioch were on the verge of rioting over the answer. If Constantine couldn't fix this theological fracture, his empire would collapse. So, he issued an imperial decree. Every major bishop in the known world had to travel to a small lakeside resort town called Nicaea. The fate of the Christian faith was about to be decided by imperial pressure. To understand the chaos that unfolded at Nicaea, we have to look at the man who started the fire, a charismatic, tall, ascetic priest named Arius of Alexandria. Arius looked at the growing Christian church and saw a logical contradiction. He argued that if God the Father begat Jesus the Son, then the Father must have existed before the Son. Therefore, Arius claimed, there was a time when Jesus did not exist. In his view, Jesus was the greatest creation of God, a divine superhero, but he was not fully God. To modern ears, this sounds like a minor academic debate. In 325 AD, this was absolute treason against heaven. Alexander, the powerful bishop of Alexandria, caught wind of Arius's teachings and stripped him of his priestly duties. But Arius refused to back down. He was a master of public relations. He took his theological ideas and set them to catchy sea shanties and folk tunes. Soon, sailors, dock workers, and merchants across the Mediterranean were singing songs about how Jesus was a created being. The church split down the middle. Half the bishops sided with Arius. The other half viewed him as a demonic heretic. When the 300-plus bishops finally arrived at the imperial palace in Nicaea, they did not look like polished politicians. They looked like survivors of a war zone. Only 15 years prior, Emperor Diocletian had launched the most brutal Christian purge in Roman history. As Constantine walked into the Grand Palace Hall, he looked out at an audience of mutilated men. Bishop Paphnutius of Egypt stumbled to his seat, completely blinded in his right eye and limping from severed hamstrings, punishments for refusing to worship Roman idols. Another bishop sat with both hands completely paralyzed, his tendons burned out by red-hot irons. Constantine, dressed in purple robes encrusted with gold and pearls, did something shocking. Before opening the council, he walked up to these disfigured men and kissed their empty eye sockets and scarred hands. He honored their suffering, but his kindness carried an iron fist. He made it clear he did not care about the fine details of their theology. He cared about peace. He told them, "Division in the church is worse than war." He was a military general hosting a theological trial. For weeks, the palace hall was a pressure cooker of shouting matches, ancient politics, and deep-seated regional rivalries. Because Arius was not a bishop, he wasn't allowed to speak directly. Instead, his wealthy protector, Bishop Eusebius of Nicaea, presented the Arian case. When Eusebius stood up and read the statement declaring that Jesus was merely a creature, and not co-eternal with God, the room erupted. Historical accounts claim bishops plugged their ears, shouting, "Blasphemy!" Some accounts even suggest a young, fiery bishop named Nicholas, the real-life historical figure behind the legend of Santa Claus, marched across the floor and struck an Arian supporter across the face. The debate raged around a single Greek word. The Arians wanted to use scripture, but the Orthodox bishops realized the Arians could twist every biblical verse to fit their narrative. They needed a linguistic trap. They settled on a non-biblical philosophical term, homoousios. It meant of the exact same substance. To say Jesus was homoousios with the Father meant he was 100% equal, co-eternal, and uncreated God. Constantine had seen enough. He didn't understand the complex Greek philosophy, but he saw that the majority of the room favored this word, homoousios. He put his imperial weight behind it. He effectively told the bishops, sign the statement agreeing to this word or face immediate exile from the Roman Empire. The vote was called. Out of more than 300 bishops, the overwhelming majority signed what we now know as the Nicene Creed. Only a handful refused. In the end, Arius lost completely. Constantine banned his writings, ordered all copies of his books to be burned on pain of death, and exiled Arius to the remote province of Illyricum. 2 bishops refused to break their loyalty to Arius and were exiled alongside him. The council ended with a massive imperial banquet celebrating Constantine's 20 years on the throne. The bishops, who had arrived as hunted outlaws, left as state-sponsored architects of a unified Roman religion. History books often pretend that Nicaea settled the issue forever. It didn't. In fact, the losing side didn't vanish. They nearly won the entire empire back. Just a few years later, Constantine changed his political mind. He recalled Arius from exile and was even baptized on his deathbed by an Arian bishop. For the next 50 years, Roman emperors flipped back and forth between supporting the Nicene Creed and supporting Arianism. Bishops were exiled and brought back like musical chairs. Yet 16 centuries later, the words forged in that tense, politically charged room in 325 AD are still recited by over 2 billion Christians every single Sunday. It remains one of history's greatest paradoxes. The core definition of the Christian faith was finalized not in a peaceful monastery, but in a tense political chess match orchestrated by what many consider an almost pagan emperor.